The silence of a veteran had frozen the entire room. Then Simon did something he shouldn't have done. The America's Got Talent stage had seen thousands of performances. Standing ovations, golden buzzers, tears of joy and heartbreak. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared the audience for what was about to unfold on this particular Tuesday evening. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and Simon Cowell sat at the judges' table with his arms crossed, wearing that familiar expression of controlled skepticism that had become his trademark over 27 years of judging talent shows. But in less than 3 minutes, that expression would completely shatter. A man walked onto the stage. He wasn't young. He wasn't dressed in flashy performance clothes. He wore a full military dress uniform, medals aligned perfectly across his chest, each one telling a story that most people in that theater would never fully understand. His posture was military straight, his jaw set, his eyes forward. But there was something else in those eyes. Something that transcended discipline and training. It was pain. The kind that doesn't heal with time. The audience began to applaud, a wave of respect spreading through the room as they recognized the uniform. Simon uncrossed his arms. He leaned forward slightly, just enough to show he was paying attention. The other judges smiled warmly, nodding in acknowledgement. But the veteran didn't smile back. He just stood there, microphone in hand, waiting for the noise to settle. When it did, the silence that followed was heavier than anyone expected. And that's when everything changed. Because Simon Cowell was about to witness something that would redefine what courage really means. Subscribe now, because what happens in the next few minutes will stay with you long after this video ends. The host, Terry Crews, stepped forward with his usual energy, but even he seemed to sense something different about this moment. "Welcome to the stage. What's your name, sir?" His voice was warm, encouraging, but the veteran's answer came out flat, controlled, like he was reading coordinates over a radio. "Staff Sergeant Michael Daniels. United States Army. Served 2 tours in Afghanistan." The applause started again, but Michael raised his hand gently, stopping it. "Please. I'd rather just get to it." Terry nodded and stepped back. The stage was his. Simon leaned even further forward now, his elbows resting on the table. His eyes narrowed, not in judgment, but in focus. He was reading this man the way he'd read thousands of performers before, trying to figure out what made him different. And he could feel it. Something was coming. Something big. Michael took a breath. It was the kind of breath you take before jumping into cold water, the kind that doesn't come easy. "I'm not here to sing a song someone else wrote. I'm not here to dance or do magic tricks." His voice cracked just slightly on the word magic, and he paused to steady himself. "I'm here because I made a promise. And I don't break promises." The camera cut to Simon. His face was unreadable, but his eyes never left Michael. 3 years ago," Michael continued, "I lost my best friend. His name was Corporal James Reed. We served together. We fought together. And one night, in a field hospital in Kandahar, I watched him die. The room went completely still. You could hear the hum of the stage lights. Someone in the audience let out a quiet sob. Michael's hand tightened around the microphone. Before he passed, he made me promise him something. He said, "Mike, when you get home, don't just survive. Live. Do something that scares you. Do something that matters." And then he smiled at me. Even with all that pain, he smiled. Simon's hand moved slowly to his mouth. It was subtle, but the camera caught it. His jaw tightened. His eyes glistened under the stage lights. "So I'm here," Michael said, his voice stronger now, "because this terrifies me. Standing in front of all of you. Being vulnerable. But James believed I had something worth sharing. And even if I fail tonight, I'll have kept my word to him." The judges exchanged glances. Howie Mandel had tears streaming down his face. Heidi Klum pressed her hand to her chest. Sofia Vergara wiped her eyes quickly, trying to maintain composure. But Simon hadn't moved. He just stared at Michael with an intensity that felt almost protective. And then, Michael began to sing. But what came out of his mouth wasn't just a song. It was a eulogy, a battle cry, and a confession all at once. The song was Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. His voice wasn't perfect. It cracked in places. It wavered. But every single note carried the weight of a man who had seen too much, lost too much, and was still standing. The lyrics about war, loss, and the bond between soldiers hit the room like a freight train. Halfway through the first verse, something unprecedented happened. Simon stood up. Not to leave. Not to walk off in frustration like he'd done before with acts he didn't believe in. No. He stood up because sitting felt wrong. He walked around the judge's table, slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving Michael. The other judges looked at him in shock. The producers backstage were frantically whispering into their headsets. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't planned. Simon Cowell had just broken protocol on live television. He stopped at the edge of the stage, just a few feet from where Michael stood singing. And he just listened. His arms hung at his sides. His face, usually so controlled, so measured, was completely open. Tears ran down his cheeks, and he made no effort to hide them. Michael saw him. For a split second, his voice faltered. But then he locked eyes with Simon, and something passed between them. An understanding. A recognition. Two men who had spent their lives building walls, now standing in the wreckage of those walls, raw and unguarded. The song continued. The audience was on their feet now, but they weren't cheering. They were silent, respectful, witnessing something sacred. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was a memorial service. A resurrection. A man honoring his fallen brother in the only way he knew how. When the final note faded, the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Simon did something he had never done in 27 years of judging. He walked onto the stage. Not to the contestant. To the microphone stand. He took the microphone gently from Michael's hand and turned to face the audience. I need to say something. Simon's voice was rough, unsteady. And I need everyone here, everyone watching at home, to hear this. He turned back to Michael. I've spent my entire career judging people. Deciding who's good enough. Who has what it takes. And most of the time, I'm right. But tonight I realized something. He paused, struggling to find the words. Talent isn't about hitting the perfect note. It's not about technical skill or stage presence. Talent is about truth. And you, Michael, you just gave us more truth in 3 minutes than most people give in a lifetime. The audience erupted. Not in polite applause, but in a roar of emotion. People were sobbing openly. Howie Mandel stood up, clapping so hard his hands had to hurt. Heidi and Sophia were both crying, nodding, their hands over their hearts. But Simon wasn't done. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was worn, creased, like it had been carried for a long time. My father, Simon said, his voice breaking. He served in World War II. He never talked about it. Not once. And when he died, I found this letter in his things. It was addressed to his best friend, a man named Thomas, who didn't make it home. Simon's hands were shaking as he unfolded the letter. In it my father wrote, I'll live enough for both of us. I'll make sure your sacrifice meant something. And for years I didn't understand why he was so hard on me. Why he pushed me so relentlessly. But now I do. He was keeping a promise. Just like you are. Michael's face crumpled. The military bearing, the steel composure, it all fell away. He covered his face with his hands and wept. Not quietly. Not politely. He wept the way a man weeps when he's been carrying a weight too heavy for too long. Simon stepped forward and pulled Michael into an embrace. Two grown men, crying on national television, holding on to each other like lifelines. The camera pulled back, capturing the entire stage. The judges standing, the audience on their feet, the lights soft and golden. And in the center of it all, two men connected by loss, by honor, by the unspoken bond of those who carry the weight of others' sacrifices. Share this video. Subscribe. Because stories like this remind us what it means to be human. When they finally pulled apart, Simon kept his hand on Michael's shoulder. "You're going to the next round," he said, his voice steadier now. "Not because of your voice, but because of your heart. And because James deserves to be remembered. And you, Michael, you deserve to live." The other judges hit their buzzers immediately, all 4 votes unanimous. But Simon had one more thing to do. He looked at Michael, then at the audience, then back at Michael. And without a word, he walked over to the judges' table and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The stage exploded in golden confetti. The music swelled. The audience screamed. But through it all, Michael stood there, arms raised, face turned upward, tears mixing with the falling gold, and for the first time in 3 years he smiled. Not because he had won, but because he had kept his promise. And Simon Cowell, the man known for breaking hearts and crushing dreams, stood at the edge of the stage, watching it all, his own heart cracked wide open. Because sometimes, the most powerful performances aren't about perfection. They're about truth. And truth, when it's spoken with that much courage, changes everyone who hears it. This wasn't just a moment on a talent show. It was a reminder that behind every uniform, every medal, every stoic face, there's a story. And when those stories are finally told, they have the power to break us down and build us back up stronger than before. Simon would later say in an interview that this was the performance that changed him. That made him realize his job wasn't just to find stars. It was to find truth. And Michael had given him more truth than he'd seen in decades. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe to make sure you never miss moments like these. Because in a world full of noise, stories like Michael's cut through everything and remind us what really matters. Leave a comment below and tell us, what promise are you keeping? What truth are you finally ready to share? Because like Michael showed us tonight, the bravest thing you can do is be honest. Even when it terrifies you. Especially when it terrifies you. And to every veteran watching this, every person carrying the weight of loss, every soul who made a promise to someone they loved and lost, you are seen. You are heard. And your courage, just like Michael's, will never be forgotten. The aftermath of that night rippled through the world in ways no one could have predicted. The video went viral within hours. Millions of views. Thousands of comments from veterans, military families, people who had lost someone and never found the words to express it. Michael became a symbol, not of perfect performance, but of perfect honesty. But the real transformation happened backstage, in the moments the cameras didn't catch. Simon found Michael in the green room, sitting alone, still in his uniform, staring at a photograph. It was James. Young, smiling, alive. Simon sat down next to him without saying a word. They sat there for nearly 20 minutes in complete silence. No producers. No cameras. Just two men who understood that some moments don't need words. Finally, Simon spoke. "My father never told me he was proud of me. Not once. But after he died, I found a box of every article ever written about me. Every magazine cover. Every interview. He kept them all." Simon's voice was barely above a whisper. "And I realized he was proud. He just didn't know how to say it. Just like I didn't know how to tell him I understood why he pushed me so hard." Michael looked at Simon, then back at the photograph. James used to say that the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with words. With the courage to be vulnerable. I never understood what he meant until tonight. Simon nodded. You honored him tonight. Not just by keeping your promise, but by showing the world that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about breaking. And still standing. That conversation, that moment of connection between two men from completely different worlds, became the foundation for something bigger. Simon started a foundation in honor of his father and James Reed, dedicated to helping veterans share their stories through the arts. Michael became a spokesperson, traveling the country, encouraging others to speak their truth. But more than that, Simon changed. The man who had built a career on critique and judgment became known for something else: compassion. He still had high standards. He still demanded excellence. But now, he understood that excellence isn't just about technical perfection. It's about emotional truth. And that night, Michael had taught him the most important lesson of his career: the most powerful performances come from the heart, not the voice. Years later, in an interview, Simon would be asked about the moment that defined his career. Without hesitation, he answered, "The night a veteran taught me that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway." Michael didn't just keep a promise that night. He gave me permission to be human. And that changed everything.